Hi everyone, my name is Herkeph and welcome back to my incredibly stupid hardcore world where I'm only allowed to use wooden tools and leather armor. Today, we're starting off by connecting our new base that we've built to the nether roof, so that we can actually move out of our starter house completely. But in order to do that, I had to fly over to our old starter house one last time, and whilst we were in the process of linking up our portals, I also decided that it'd probably be a good idea to also give us a way of accessing the nether from the nether roof, so I watched a tutorial of how to break bedrock and got to the task at hand. And after we had successfully broken the bedrock and given us a way to enter the real nether, I decided that it was about time we connected our raid farm to the nether roof as well. That way we wouldn't have to fly for as long as before. And as we all know, I am a very lazy young man. I then remembered that there's still an obvious farm that I had completely forgotten about, since my brain seems to be actively working against me. That farm being a sugarcane farm. So just like the other farms that we built last episode, I built the sugarcane farm inside of the island we built, so we wouldn't have to look at it, since it's kind of ugly. But now that all those little bits and bobs were dealt with, I started work on what we actually want to do this episode. The main objective today is to get ourselves the Swift Sneak enchantment. This means that we'll be going out on an adventure in hopes of finding an ancient city, and since I have the same IQ as an average mouth breather, I decided that the best way to find an ancient city was to simply dig in a straight line until it magically appeared in front of me. I ran with this method until I had exhausted the durability of all of my pickaxes, twice, only taking a break to go back to my raid farm to repair all of my poor pickaxes. However, my streak of doing incredibly stupid things kept going, as I forgot to get rid of my bad omen effect before entering my base again. So I accidentally set off a level 5 raid right in my base. I then had to spend the next 42 minutes and 34 seconds fighting off a bunch of humming grey people in an epic skirmish, which was very inconvenient, since the Ravagers kept destroying my trees. However, eventually, I managed to clear the raid and got to the task of replanting trees that could easily have been avoided if I had sufficient intellect. But with that little distraction aside, I remembered that I am using a computer and that Google exists. So I decided to Google how to find an ancient city and found out that the deep dark biome, which is the biome where ancient cities spawn, are located under biomes with low erosion, meaning mountains. So the only thing I'd have to do was to find a mountainous area and hope that I can find a crevasse leading into an ancient city. So I abandoned my previous strategy and decided to take flight in search of my precious Swift Sneak book. After a bit of exploring, I did manage to find myself a deep dark biome, but unfortunately, this one didn't have an ancient city, meaning I got epically baited by a game made for children. However, I didn't let that dampen my spirit and decided to continue with my newfound strategy of flying into random crevasses by mountainous areas. And eventually, I did manage to find myself an ancient city. I then raided said ancient city in a very heroic and brave way, I breaking a chest and flying away in terror, hoping that Warden wouldn't be mean to me. and after raiding the entirety of the ancient city I found, I started sorting all of our loot whilst listening to my new music disc that I had found. I also took the moment to put one of the Swift sneak books we found on our leather trousers, and whilst doing so, I noticed that we only managed to find one type of armor trim, meaning that we would probably have to find ourselves yet another ancient city. But before heading out for the continuation of our adventure, I decided to go and grab myself some copper. I am not entirely sure why I decided to do that, but here we are. And now you might be wondering how I'll be able to grab copper if I'm only allowed to use wooden tools. And the solution to that little problem is using TNT. I then started making my base a tiny bit more homely by decorating my soon-to-be bedroom at the top of one of my towers. And I also decorated my walls a tiny bit. And after having procrastinated for an embarrassingly long time, I flew off and found myself yet another ancient city. And this one was absolutely huge. So I began doing the exact same thing that I did in the last ancient city, i.e. breaking a chest at a time and flying away in absolute terror. However, even with my somewhat cowardly approach, I was rewarded rather handsomely as I did manage to get my hands on the Silence Armor trim, which is the rarest armor trim in the game. I then flew home and decided to use the Silence Armor trim on my leather armor. I decided to once again go for diamonds for my trim color, just to flex on all the other players here in my single player world. I then finally realized that I had gotten myself the rarest armor trim in the game. So I decided to continue looking for armor trims. But before I set off once again, I decided to change my armor trim color to redstone, as it matches with my base's roof color as well as my cloak. So I then raided a jungle temple, but did unfortunately not find a new armor trim. I then looked up how many armor trims are available in the game, and found that 4 of them are acquired via archaeology. So I spent a very soul-crushingly long time looking for some trail ruins that I could excavate, and after finding it about 10,000 blocks away from my base, I made sure to clear the entirety of it in hopes of getting all of the armor trims I needed. However, once I was done with my great excavation, I realized that I had only gotten 3 out of the available 4, which was rather infuriating. But some good news is that I managed to find a second jungle temple on my way back to my base, which did have a new armor trim for me. And there we have it, the 8th episode of my incredibly stupid hardcore world. I hope you enjoyed it. Please leave a like and subscribe if you did, and I'll see you in the next one.